Hello and welcome to another The Wonderful Truth video. In this video we will discuss whether or not the existence of a transcendent God is probable. And the reason why I use the word probable is because you can't prove a negative. This means that you can't disprove statements or claims that we in practice are unable to observe. For instance, you can't prove to me that Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy or leprechauns doesn't exist. You also can't disprove that there is a 5-headed dragon orbiting some random planet in the galaxy of Andromeda, or perhaps a flying spaghetti monster or a teapot hovering around in space. Neither is it possible to prove the non-existence of God, whether it is Yahweh, Thor, Zeus, Poseidon, Kali, Hades, Sao Shen, Amun-Ra, Vishnu, Aphrodite, Apollo, Ganesha, or any of the countless examples of man-made deities. So, how can we examine claims like these? How can we examine the existence of God? Well, we can use two simple methods. First, we can look at the evidence at hand. Now, usually it's whomever that makes a claim that has the burden of proof. But since theists haven't provided any such evidence for the existence of God, we won't be able to take use of this first method. Now, if you're sitting at home yelling at your computer and at the sound of my voice because you most definitely have good evidence for the existence of God, you shouldn't write it in the comment section of this video. No, you should finish up that scientific article of yours, publish it, and take a flight straight to Norway to receive your Nobel Peace Prize for finally revealing to humanity how the world actually works. Now, until that happens, we shall move on to the second method of examining the existence of God. In this second method we shall take use of that 60% fat, weird-looking, slimy, juicy hard drive that hides beneath your skull, also called a brain, because we shall in this second method use logic in order to enhance our understanding of the probability of the existence of a God. You probably don't have a hard time figuring out that the examples I mentioned before are so unlikely that you will inside your head deem them not to be true. This is logical, but in terms of the list of gods, depending on whether you are an atheist, monotheist or polytheist, you only subscribe to that god or those gods that your religion claims to be true. Or perhaps you are a believer in a non-personal god or some other version of a god in which there are also numerous examples of. Either way, you are perfectly capable of figuring out on your own that all those other gods that you don't believe in are so unlikely to exist that you once again inside your head deem them not to be true. But your logic reaches bedrock the second your own religion gets inserted into the equation. With the use of logic, I will therefore imply that you think critically about your own god or gods just like you do with all the other gods that you don't believe in. I hope this video can help you do that. So, when talking about the probability of any god, we must first and foremost define God. Now, it would be extremely hard to define what God is or what God is made of, because there isn't an agreement amongst theists on these questions. Secondly, however, we can try and define what theists claim God does or what God is capable of. Naturally, there is also disagreement amongst theists here, but I will now try and define the most frequent abilities that God has. And the list is as follows. Perhaps you believe in a God that created the cosmos and all the physical laws within it. Dependent on what version of God you might believe in, God perhaps even took the liberty of creating all the planets, solar systems and galaxies individually. The sky, the oceans, everything within our cosmos and the world as we know it. Or perhaps you believe that God just initiated Big Bang and basically did nothing afterwards besides spectating. Perhaps you believe in a God that also created life, created you and all the animals that have ever existed. Or perhaps you find Darwin's theory of evolution to make sense, and therefore perhaps God just initiated life, just like the Big Bang, and afterwards just spectated how life evolved. Perhaps your God is capable of listening to prayer. God knows what you're thinking. God might even answer your prayers, and if your God is a real badass, God might even intervene in the real world and perform miracles as God sees fit. Perhaps God controls certain aspects of the world, such as the sun, the weather, the moon, or any sort of natural phenomena. Also, and most importantly, God dictates what is going to happen to you when you die. And if you've been good, you will go to heaven, and if you've been bad, you will burn eternally in hell. Or perhaps you believe in a version where you might live your next life as a big, mighty lion in the savannah, or perhaps as a rat in the sewer, dependent on how good you've been. And you've come to acquire this information either through scripture. God is not only the founder of everything, God is also a well-respected writer. Or perhaps God told someone about what he was thinking, and that someone then wrote it down. Or you've learned it through your family, it's in the culture you live in, and so on and so forth. I am sure that there are some other gods out there that have other abilities, or shall I say superpowers, but these seem to be the most frequent ones. Okay, now that we have defined what this god character is capable of, we can further examine how probable any such character is. And I will do this by applying logic when examining these abilities or superpowers individually. I will start off with the notion that God is or has the ability to control certain natural phenomena. Gods like these would be Thor, the Norse mythology god of thunder, Ra, the ancient Egyptian god of the sun, Marimar, the Hindu god of rain, and so on and so forth. What is noticeable about these gods is that most of these gods are ancient and bygone, and this is because all of these natural phenomena have been explained without the aid of superstition. They have been observed and studied by scientists who have, based on empirical evidence, concluded and made theories about the natural world. It is therefore not a coincidence that these gods tend to flourish in areas and amongst people who have limited access to these facts. There is absolutely no good reason why one should add superstitious beliefs onto a natural occurrence that can be easily and logically explained without these superstitious beliefs, because by doing so it results in infinite explanations which are not even explanations at all. For example, the chair you're sitting in right now, it's not just any chair. It is the God of all chairs, and if you're sitting comfortably right now, it is because the God of all chairs has decided that you should. And if you're sitting uncomfortably, it is because you have displeased the God of all chairs. I suppose this sounds silly to you, and hopefully it does, and equally so should a guy swinging a hammer making thunder and a dude with a bird head controlling the sun. The same logic and way of thinking is just as relevant when discussing the notion of miracles. If you witness or hear from somebody else that some type of remarkable event has happened, ask yourself, what is more likely? That some type of divine agency has bent the natural and scientific laws as we know them in order to perform some type of extraordinary act, or there is a perfectly logical and natural explanation for the event. And if you still do believe in miracles, what makes you think that it is your God or divine agency that is responsible for the event? The reason why I ask this is because no matter what belief system you are embedded in, there are people on each side claiming to have experienced or witnessed miracles from their gods. And this is not just one religion against another, these are endless miracles from countless religions opposing one another. This should be a clear indication of what these so-called miracles really are, which is, well, not miracles at all. Once again, I will imply that we use the same way of thinking about the notion of prayers in Scripture. Isn't it weird that there are billions of people who are praying and who are in dialogue with their god or gods that are contrary to one another? I mean, they can't all be in dialogue with God because they're not referring to the same God. This is something even theists can agree upon, and at best only one of them can be true, right? So what is really going on here? Are some of them just lucky enough to have been born into the right family at the right place and at the right time, so that they've prayed or even spoken to the right God, and all those other people are just misled and deluded? Not only did God create the entire cosmos with billions upon billions of galaxies, and within each galaxy billions upon billions of stars and planets. But that same God is also extremely invested in what each and every one of us human beings on planet Earth is thinking. Or is it perhaps more likely that all prayer and so-called dialogue with the divine is a symptom of delusion? I ask that you think critically and logically about this, and the same goes for Scripture. It is really unfortunate that God authored more than one holy book, each of which is contrary to one another. This should likewise be a clear indication that these religious texts aren't messages from the divine, but rather man-made texts made millennia ago by peasants who didn't even know that planet Earth was round. Let's say that there is an all-powerful God who intends to write a book. I'm pretty sure that book would be a little more interesting than what we've got so far, because there is absolutely no new information in any holy book. Neither are there anything that resembles a powerful all-knowing mind. All there is myths and statements that can be scientifically and logically disproven. Earlier I mentioned that some gods, namely the ones that control certain aspects of nature, are ancient and bygone. Because of the progression of science, we now have a much broader understanding about the world we live in, so we don't need these gods because they add nothing. Thus, there are still some questions about the world that science haven't yet been able to answer. This is questions such as, how did it all begin? How did life come about? And what happens when we die? These are the questions that have not yet been answered, and so these are the areas in which the God of the gaps still has wriggle room. As science has progressed, God's so-called room for maneuver has shrunken. What people used to believe God was responsible for now have shrunken into these last few questions. The God of the gaps is the result of all the things science has answered and what is yet to be answered. Still, we can think logically about this divine God of the gaps being. If you invoke a supernatural being to explain how everything started, then you have still answered absolutely nothing, because you are left without an explanation for that supernatural being itself. We can all agree that the world we live in is rather complex, and so are we, us biological creatures. If something were to create us and the world we live in, then that creator must be just as or even more complex than what it is creating. So when theists try and provide answers for the last few questions science has yet to answer with the use of a god, they're not just doing so with the lack of evidence, but the answers they provide are also illogical and give rise to even more questions which are totally irrelevant. Questions such as, who or what created God? Who or what created the thing that created God? Who or what created the thing that created the other thing that created God? And we can ask these questions endlessly. So why not start off with what we know and try not to fulfill these gaps with answers that have zero empirical evidence and that can be logically invalidated when given just a brief moment of thought. Throughout human history, over 10,000 gods have been made up by people who were trying to find answers for things they couldn't answer themselves. Religious people are all atheists when concerning all the other gods their religion does not subscribe to. I will just imply that you go one god further. And so, with this in mind, we can reject the God hypothesis and all the horrible elements that religion entails, such as the idea of an eternal hell with endless torment. This is of course a whole other subject about the amorality of religious doctrine. Well, perhaps another video. For now, I will just thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. Feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to watch more. All there is left to say is, have a wonderful day.